6 of the Iyanla Fix My Life healing process, sharing of thoughts and insights. As I said before, I would be back. We are having load shedding issues in our country, so I was not able to put out anything out yesterday. So hopefully we have time today. Let me just quickly say, if you have not yet subscribed, like about 94% of you watch but you haven't subscribed yet. If you have not subscribed and you like what you see on this channel, please consider subscribing down below and hit that notifications bell so that you can receive a notification every time that I do upload something on the channel. And also share and like, so that more people can come who are like you and who like this content that is on this channel. So that would be very helpful for me. If you could do that, I would be very grateful. Well, without any delay, let me get into this first part. So what I want to say is that, you know, this particular episode 6 of season 8 starts out with Iyanla meeting with the dad, David Senior, and then Iyanla meeting with Lawrence, who's the older son but adopted, and then meets with David Jr., and then meets with the entire family, including their aunt on the dad's side, Donna, who's a support system, and also then meets with Iyanla and Dr. Perry and David Jr., as well as with David Senior. And then there's a final closing scene where Donna is there, David Senior and Jr. are there, and Dr. Perry is also there. So in this first about 3 segments of meeting with the dad, meeting with the sons, the 2 different sons, I think what I can point out is, you know, that Iyanla is just trying to find out what their story is, what they think they're here for, and what comes out of what they say they think they're here for that they are not seeing. What really touched me about this particular part was the meeting with David Senior, where, you know, Iyanla has a conversation with him about how, you know, the loss of his wife, and how he says, you know, this is not something that I signed up for. You know, I didn't sign up to be a single parent to 2 young boys. Everyone thinks their wife is always going to be there and vice versa. But when death happens, it changes the dynamic. And especially if he, like David, you are the kind of parent who was the passive, not so much of a disciplinarian parent, it can become a difficult feat to adjust to, because then these children are also in pain. They need some kind of structure and a continuity of a setting of expectations and being held accountable, and, you know, the parents still getting in their faces and not dropping the ball on them because of their pain. But what has happened is that David Senior, because of his pain and his brokenness about his pain, is that, you know, he's become even more passive. If it's difficult for him to approach and to face, he just doesn't deal with it. And he's just that kind of, he's gone into that kind of approach of parenting. And as a result, these sons are running around without structure, without accountability, without discipline, without expectations that they need to have in place and reach in order for them to be considered, you know, still in line with the plan that the parents had. And also just in line with, you don't end up in prison, but you are going through the course where you're going to be a young, successful Black man, and you are not creating obstacles for yourself to get into that sense of stability and security of a life that is not plagued with prison as part of your story. But what was most touching in the meeting with David Senior for me was the moment where Iyanla just brought it up to him that, you know, to admit that he is actually very angry at God, and he languaged that. He eventually languaged that, and he talked about how, you know, he's this pastor who's always speaking life into people, teacher who is inspiring young people, and then this kind of thing happens to him. What kind of reward is this? And what struck me about this particular conversation is, Iyanla said, well, tell God how angry you are, because he already knows. What struck me about this conversation, that when you do tell God what he already knows, it actually brings you closer to him, and he's aware of your pain all this time that you are hiding it from him because you don't think you have the right to tell God that you are angry at him. And in whatever way that you justify, like, look, I don't bother nobody, I don't hurt anyone, I wish well for people, I speak life into people's lives, and then I get whatever kind of misfortune of a reward outcome in life, and these are question marks. And it's very important to have that conversation with God and to just open your heart and let him know, because I believe that the healing, and I think perhaps what revelation you can have about it, or becoming unstuck, happens the moment that you have that honest conversation with God or with anyone. I think if you were sticking to not having a intimate conversation, a real conversation with someone because you're afraid of their reaction, what you are creating is distance between the two of you. But when you have that conversation, it brings you closer together, and whatever is creating blockage then becomes unstuck, and there is a sense of a forward movement. And you can tell that just by his face, his demeanor by the end of the process. David Senior's countenance was just completely different to what it was at the beginning, where it was just like, it was just like, I'm brokenhearted. And then by the end, he was laughing because Iyanla was at the end giving him a different kind of ticket for his life to continue. I just thought that was a very key part of the conversation. I think what also was interesting with the approach with Lawrence, when Lawrence said things about himself, he revealed who he was. Part of how he described himself to Iyanla when having a conversation is that he sometimes doesn't tell the truth, and he sometimes doesn't do this, he sometimes doesn't do that. And he thinks it's just, telling her, giving her a picture of what's really going on. But I found it interesting that Iyanla really, really heard him, that this man was actually saying, I'm not honest, and I tell lies. And it's part of my hustle, it's part of my charm, it's part of me getting my way, it's part of my being manipulative, that I tell lies. And it's something that, he's saying as he's now finding himself in the middle of this healing process. That's something he wants to do away with. So what happens in the next day, day 2, when he now wakes up, he hasn't done what he was asked to do by Dr. Perry, which was to find a study guide and to find out the date or sign up for the civil servants test that he said he wanted to do, a civil servant, job that he wanted to do, whether he was going to be a fireman or a policeman. He wakes up and he goes back into his usual hustle, into his usual charm and of deceit, which is to lie to get himself out of a situation. So he lies and he says that he has this, his chest hurts, his stomach hurts, his shoulder hurts, everything hurts. And Iyanla sees him, and Dr. Perry, they come as well, and the paramedic is there, and they're trying to figure out, so where is the pain and what is hurting you? And the paramedic is, look, all his vitals are normal. There's nothing wrong with him, but just in case, let's take him into the hospital. They all decide, take him to the hospital just in case. And on the end, Iyanla says, look, I don't believe him. I've seen this before. I have grandsons, I have grandchildren, And this looks like leave me the F alone, and also diverting attention away from the fact that he didn't do what he was asked to do and he agreed to do, as part of him buying a ticket out of this tunnel of that has been created for young Black men in America, from the education system to the prison system. He gets it. Iyanla asks the dad, and something interesting comes out of this, asks David Sr., do you believe him? And David Sr. clearly doesn't believe Lawrence, but won't actually say, because he wants to give him the benefit of the doubt. But it's very clear that something's off, something's up, but everyone is saying, we don't want to say you're lying and we're on television and something was actually wrong with you, so let's send you. That's clear. That's what the understanding is. So they say, let's send you to the hospital so you can get checked out in a more thorough and more advanced way, just to make sure that everything is smooth and running smooth. So they send him to the hospital. What comes back to Iyanla is that once he gets to the hospital, Lawrence refused all treatment. And when someone from the show came to fetch him and was saying, okay, he was already waiting outside. And this person from the show says, well, wait, they must have a bill for you and we need to come in and pay the bill, for examining you and prescribing what they prescribed to you. And he says, no, don't go inside. There's nothing that they found, and it turns out that there's nothing that was wrong with Lawrence, because he could not be examined for anything because he refused to be examined for anything, which means that nothing was wrong. And that was now going to be proven twice from the paramedics to the hospital, that nothing is wrong with this person, but they're putting on this act. And I'll come back to this, so put a post-it on that. I'm trying to think about what happened with David Jr. that stood out for me. I just think the thing with David Jr. is that he's young, he's looking to fit in, he's still grappling with peer pressure, just basic 16-year-old teenage peer pressure things, but that compounded with there is no discipline, there is no structure, there's no accountability, there's no expectations, and there are no consequences for not meeting any of these expectations. That creates chaos, and he creates therefore chaos for David Sr. In the form of being this impossible teenager who's about 3 to 6 months from ending up in jail. But the sense that I got from just his energy or his aura is that this is a very sensible young man, and he is in the midst of peer pressure. He's doing this and he's rolling with the incorrect crowd, the wrong crowd, because he wants to fit in. He's looking for some validation, and there's things that he's angry about, particularly with his dad taking up sides with Lawrence, who's always manipulating and telling lies and getting his way. And he's the kind of son who sees through the lies and is always fighting with his older adopted brother about these things, because he sees the truth. It's interesting because Lawrence in his segment with Iyanla says, oh no, he gets on David Jr. whenever he goes out of line. He doesn't let it slip, and he gets in his face, unlike the dad. But then what comes up from the conversation with David Jr. is that actually Lawrence is quite combative towards him, and Lawrence is not as innocent in the picture or in the story as he purports himself to be. But that the fights are always around Lawrence being proven to be a liar, to being dishonest, to playing games with his dad to get his way or to get out of trouble with their dad. And that's when David Jr. calls him out. And I think that's what the fights between them and the disagreements between them are about. It's about this younger brother who sees through the BS. And when they try to bring it up to the dad is like, there's no BS here. I don't see any BS here. And then the fight between the two siblings happen. So again, Lawrence wasn't very honest about why there is the points of contention between him and David Jr., his younger brother, which still confirms that he's a liar. And what I guess what was interesting to me is I was thinking about this dynamic of this adopted son, Lawrence, and how I think Lawrence gets given his way because, oh, he's adopted. And I think his parents, including his now deceased mother, have given him an easier way, the leeway, you know, because, oh, he's adopted. And then they're harder on the one who's the biological child. That's the kind of thing that's bound to create sibling rivalry or contention between siblings. But not only that, Iyanla says also further on in the conversation that also what creates that is that, you know, Lawrence was an only child for about 3-4 years, and then came the younger brother. So all the attention was now no longer on him, and it had to be split between two people, and that changes the dynamic and it creates some kind of sibling rivalry. But I think what it is that the rivalry is actually fueled by the parents treating the adopted child because, oh, woe is him, he's adopted, better than this biological son. But this biological son seems to be bringing less problems to the table than the adopted son. And so it creates this kind of contention where it's like, I'm being overlooked. My behavior is not the best, but if you were to compare behaviors, I'm doing okay. And here's my brother wilding out, acting out, buying drugs to sell drugs, his car getting shot, being dishonest, hustling and manipulating, doing all kinds of things, and he gets given leeway and nobody questions him as much as or calls him higher as much as he, David Jr., is called, and there's this high expectation of him. So he's kind of overlooked and undermined in his position, and I think that also like pours gas into the fire of the contention between the two siblings. I think when there's favoritism of some sort, of somehow, siblings know it. And, you know, it's either you have a mature sibling who doesn't allow that. They might know that I'm the favorite, but I'm not going to allow the parents to always be shining a light on me. I'm always going to include everyone else. There's that, or the sibling who takes that and basks in all of it and sticks their tongue out at the other siblings like, nah, 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 I'm the favorite. Look at all the light is on me, and who, you know, and you don't matter. And then they do everything and anything to keep all that attention on them. That creates contention, that creates a fight. And that's what I got from, that's what I'll say from just their dynamic as father and two sons, is that this favoritism, and it creates contention between the siblings. And I think the younger son is more sensible than the older son, and is always telling the dad what he sees, which is sensible perspective. And the dad always overlooks and undermines it because he's the younger one, he's the, you know, biological one. So let's spoil this adopted one. That's what I got from this. If I were to triangulate these 3 segments of the meetings with the father, meetings with the two sons separately. What I liked with Dr. Perry's approach to both of these young men is that when he came into the room, he commanded respect that they didn't have for their father. He would say, stand up, son, and greet me. And then, you know, he would demand clear answers from them. When he was making 2 requests for them to fulfill by the next day at the end of their conversations, it was a, this is what I expect of you, this is what this is when I need it by, and then we can move forward from there. And you know, he was commanding a certain level of respect. Yes, sir. You know, I didn't hear you. Yes, sir. Okay. You know, and I think that that's part of what's going on with these young boys. Their father's not even commanding any kind of respect from them. I don't even think, you know, they have to explain themselves to their dad, you know. And I mean, further on, I'm not going to get into it now, but further on, David Jr. does allude to, hey, when mom died, we kind of wore our dad out. My dad was strong and now he's kind of just worn out. So I get his passivity. And at the same time, I say, you know, which is why Iyanla brings in the notion of support and the support system. You know, I get it, but he doesn't get to drop the ball. You know, you don't get to drop the ball because when a mother dies, or, you know, everyone has lost someone. It's not just the father who has lost their best friend and their, you know, whoever. Everyone has lost someone. You know, the sons have lost their mother. You've lost your best friend, your confidant, your, you know, the person that you were planning to grow old with. They were also, kids are also planning to grow old with their mother there. Kids are planning to grow old and bring grandchildren to the mom who will dote on these grandchildren. So everyone has a picture, and no one's picture is more important and more valid than the other. So the loss is as deep for everyone. And so, you know, unfortunately, as a parent, you don't have the opportunity to claim brokenheartedness and therefore checking out. You still have a job to do. I will see you again in part 3, which is the final part. I don't want to be long, but thank you for watching. Check down below in the description box for part 1, as well as the first comment. I will pin it for part 1 so that you can quickly go back to that before continuing in this series. But the next part 3 is the last series. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.